So, Sean, I thought we'd drop back into the coalition of the willing. It's not funny, but I just...
No, it isn't really.
Every time I say it, I
Sounds
think...
like a Eurovision Song Contest entry, really, doesn't it? Please
Yeah.
welcome from the Netherlands, the coalition of the willing.
Yes, that would be quite a good sort of multicultural band, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So it's obviously quite serious, and it's been going on for 6-9 months now. And I suppose if you strip it all back, it's all based on the assumption that there'll be some sort of ceasefire. There'll be some sort of peace deal. Mr. Putin will agree to stop either where he is or a little bit further, and that peace will break out in Ukraine, which I think everyone would welcome. But as part of that, Ukrainians understandably want some sort of guarantees and support. The European nations, there's 30 of them, 30 plus countries have committed and signed up to the coalition of the willing.
Because this is all, sorry to interrupt, but this is all,
it's good.
This all has its kernel, if you like, back in the first Gulf War, doesn't it? You remember when George Bush Senior was trying to gather together a coalition to liberate Kuwait.
I do remember.
That was the first coalition of the willing, wasn't it? Where I think Britain was involved. Various other, Saudi Arabia and various other nations all came together to march on Kuwait and kick Saddam Hussein and his troops out. So I think that's where the
phrase,
the terminology has come from, to try and make it sound as though. Sorry, and I interrupted you in your flow, so sorry, carry on.
No, it's good. It's good because I knew I'd heard it somewhere, but I didn't realise it dates that much. So, and then you sort of scratch around for a little bit of detail, and you think, well, who is taking the risk here? And then you say, 26 countries with potential military contributions. Oh, that sounds good. And then you say, well, who's likely to put the so-called boots on the ground? And then the 26 countries is whittled down to 2.
The coalition of the partners.
Well, yes. And therefore, joking apart, do you actually have a coalition of the not so willing, the other 24?
What are they providing to the coalition then? Do you know, they're providing mail services or something?
Well, intelligence, hardware, moral support, monitoring, communications.
But not this boots on the ground that is the terminology now, isn't it?
So you actually, the only 2 nations, although even they haven't said this, that, or the other, the only 2 nations who've sort of suggested they put soldiers on the ground are France and the UK. And they are, of course, subject to their parliaments. They can't just, the president, the prime minister can't just go and do that.
No.
So there seems to be a lot of hurdles, but you think, well, okay, I remember some very wise general, I think he was on Channel 4 News, saying, well, if you want to put 7,500, which is the figure that's been mentioned for the Brits, troops on the ground, you actually need 3 times that many, because you've got to have one group who are there, one group who are ready to go there, and one group who are resting having been there.
Yeah.
So that's round figures, about 22,000, which is about a third of the British Army.
Yeah.
So you think, well, that's quite an investment, isn't it?
Well, I heard something very similar yesterday by another one of these Sir General Bufton Tufton, who was in charge of the chief, whatever they call it, the top man. He's retired now, and he
chief
was
of staff. Yeah,
he's the one, and he was saying that you'd virtually need what we used to call the British Army on the Rhine, which is when we were in the depth of the Cold War. And this ran up until the mid-1980s, apparently. You know, when we were really,
I do.
You remember the times when we had Frankie Goes to Hollywood singing about 2 tribes going to war, and everybody thought, you know, we had Green in common and everything. We, at that point, had a huge, relatively speaking, huge army based in Germany that were doing the stuff. I think one of our friends was involved in that time.
Yeah, I remember.
But since then, to use the words of Ben Wallace yesterday, the ex-Defence Secretary, we've hollowed out our armed forces, which leaves us with a big problem, doesn't it? When they were talking about the coalition, the willing, did they come up with any solutions as to how we might fill the shortfall?
Not really. And you could argue that there isn't a shortfall if we've got 70,000 in our army and we want to deploy fewer than a third of them, that might be okay. But it doesn't feel right, does it? You've got the Americans sort of with intelligence and air support and defense mechanisms. And of course, this isn't an attacking force.
No.
This is a monitoring force.
Like a tripwire, effectively, isn't it?
Well, if you like. But there, on the other hand, is that if you look at it from Mr. Putin's point of view, whether you agree with it or not, him and Lavrov and anyone else you speak to has said under no circumstances would they accept NATO forces being in Ukraine. And if they did, they would be treated as a legitimate target. So, this could be posturing, but who's going to call that bluff? Starmer, by the looks of things.
Well, he's got to get it through the House first, doesn't he? And I think this is all a bit of as you quite well, it's been a shadow play, isn't it, really? Because I can't imagine that neither Macron nor Starmer think that Putin is going to accept this. And if they're not going to put it before their respective parliaments unless he accepts it and there's a ceasefire on the ground, then what's the point? I mean, we were talking about was it 34 nations ostensibly, you said, didn't you? Or was it that?
It started off, the headline was 30 plus countries participated in Paris. 26 of them committed to one degree or another for military resources, but only 2 were then headlined as putting boots on the ground with the suggestion that Turkey might. Yeah. I think you had a view on the Italian delegation, didn't you?
I read a report that Miss Meloni, the Prime Minister of
Georgia, is it? Georgia Meloni?
I think so, yeah. When they came to talk about the coalition of the women, she took the coalition of the willing.
Well,
not coalition of the women. They were frightened the daylights out of Putin if they did that. But coalition of the willing, that she took herself off outside to have a fag.
I'll leave you boys to it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm not quite sure if they had this debate about the coalition of the willing. If there were only 2 of them that were willing to put up troops, how did the others take part? Did they have to make a bid? I'll provide the writing paper. The stationery comes from Lithuania, wherever.
Well, this is it. So
yeah,
is it what we always seem to do? We get involved, and then you think, crikey, I know you shouldn't think about the budgetary cost, but what is the cost? Is it in the defense budget? Probably not. And there was a suggestion we're going to be training the Ukrainians. Well, I thought, well, they're going to know a little bit more about this warfare than us.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Yeah, I would have thought so.
Or is that naive?
No, I would have thought it was the other way round. I mean, the general that I was talking about earlier, he was also talking about our commitment at the moment that we're having problems within the Baltic states. We put a commitment to keep 1,000 troops permanently in Estonia, and we're having problems rotating those 1,000. So quite how we think we're going to be able to rotate 7,500. And then if you look at that in the broader scheme of things, the amount of troops that the Ukrainians and the Russians between them are losing on the battlefield each month, if they were ever in a position where they had to fight, what would happen then? I mean, they
wow.
Dread to think, don't you, really? I just think it's all shadow play. I mean, we hadn't heard yet either. There's talk about there being, I noticed Zelensky said today, they're close to having signed a deal with the Americans for a backup, a security support. But what's that going to be then? What are they going to do? If they've not got troops on the ground, what are they?
Well, Trump's made that quite clear, hasn't he? Made that quite clear. In fact, this, if you remember, this coalition of the willing kicked off, and I've just triggered the thought, shortly after the Zelensky White House debacle, in order to keep America on side, wasn't it? Because do you remember that?
Yeah.
They very quickly had a summit. So much of this, as it often is about keeping Mr. Trump on side with this element of his foreign policy. But I guess that's where we are. So I'm going to put you on the spot then. I'm going to suggest you are now a constituency MP, and it was a free vote. If this was put to you as a firm proposal that we put 7,500 troops in this peacekeeping force in Ukraine, and if we had all the other security guarantees from all the other European nations and the Americans in terms of support, air support, would you agree to it? Would you say yes or no?
Well, I think the crux of it is if Putin's agreed to it, then I think I'd probably agree to it, because I don't think go ahead with allowing something like this if he felt that he was wanting to attack it, because that'd leave him in all sorts of problems.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I think this is a hypothetical question that we're never going to get to, unfortunately, because I don't think he's going to accept. You know, as you quite rightly said earlier, he's sitting back at the moment, looking at this and questioning what are they doing? What do they think they're doing? There's no way that I'm going to agree to any of this. I mean, it's quite a bizarre situation, isn't it, that we find ourselves in, that we're having to look to our adversaries to agree to something. You can't imagine that during the Second World War, can you? Maybe we'll all have a word, but maybe we're fighting Mr. Hitler, but we won't do this unless he thinks it's okay. That's
It is
crazy.
it is, I'm going to say a little bit like that, but it's all completely like that, where America and Russia are having the sort of sidebar conversations. But there we are. So you would vote for it if Mr. Putin is happy. So
What
that's
about? I
obviously.
haven't asked you. What would you do?
I pretty much the same as you, but I would just finish this by saying that Mr. Putin will only be happy if he makes significant gains from where he is now, both in terms of territory and the assets that are clearly in the parts of the territory that he wants.
And he thinks he's got the upper hand at the moment, doesn't he?
Looks that way.